Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this video is going to be kind of like a comprehensive point-by-point list of mine and community's issues with the Spider-Woman nerf, and exactly why it has infuriated the company, well, the player base so much, why the company's actions have infuriated the player base as much as they have. And we do have 5 points to go through, and we're going to start with the first one. That's the most obvious one. It is the seeming inconsistency and kind of hypocritical approach to the champions that are getting tuned down or nerfed. Because, as we know, Spider-Woman at no point was like the best champion or the most broken champion in the game. That honor effectively has been reserved to Serpent and Thanos and Onslaught, and none of them got adjusted in any way, despite how much community wanted, for instance, Serpent to get tuned down, because obviously he was and still is a defensive menace. Realistically, Serpent has been released like a year ago or even longer than that, and Bam has been selling counters to him ever since he got released. And regardless of how many counters Kabam makes, he has so many defensive abilities that if you slap a node or two on him, half of the counters don't even work. He's that busted offensively. The best way how to describe how defensively busted he is the fact that they made him an offensive god as well by mistake, basically. And yeah, and besides Serpent, a ton of examples of defenders that community feels should have gotten tuned down and didn't, and alternative as well. We have so many champions that are obviously not performing to their standards. I could go through a list by list, but the idea that Destroyer has 4 out of 5 defender strength and 4 out of 5 damage is ridiculous. And I would never even bring these stats up because, Kabam has themselves effectively said that these are arbitrary and meaningless. Except for the fact that they are bringing the stats up themselves, being a 3.5 out of defender. Okay, then explain to me how Destroyer hasn't gotten a change. Explain to me how Werewolf by Night, for instance, has not gotten a defensive buff. Right? There are so many champions with the most random stats ever. 3 in damage, so they're trying to say that Destroyer's damage is significantly higher than Werewolves, but they are equally good defenders. Well, neither one of them are 4 out of 5 defender, realistically speaking, right? So these stats clearly have been completely arbitrary. Completely arbitrary. Kabam just put them as a rough guy-ish. But they have no consistency. And that is the first thing. Because Kabam has been so piss poor with the balance program, when they hardly buff the champions that we think they should have buffed. We look at Khonshu's Ankh, for example. Again, there are going to be a ton of champions that should have gotten a tune-up and never did. And they just forever and ever will remain mid-champions that barely anybody cares about. Here, a great example would be Isophine. There's no way you can convince anybody Isophine didn't need like an offensive tune-up. Just like I mentioned Werewolf, just like I mentioned Destroyer. Leader has no uses aside from like, massive regeneration involved, basically. None of them. All the time. Constantly. That's not to mention some of the more recent releases that are still up for buffs, and we just know they're not going to get them. But there you go. That is the first thing. The second thing is, it's also like the false advertising. Like, they themselves put matchups like Bullseye in the deep dive to make Spider-Woman look more impressive offensively. This is what they did. This was their deep dive. Right? Well, after the tune down, you can't do this. And it's not like that deep dive is going to get adjusted, because that is how they sold her. They sold her as a science champion that is fighting Bullseye. well, no longer. So the whole false advertising point here, it just feels scummy as shit. It really does. Because Kabam is exactly the type of company that are going to say and do and pretend to want to do anything just in order to make you excited for a champion, just in order to make you excited for a piece of content, just in order to make you buy that deal. It's like in their blood. They're going to use specific language like this new piece of content is going to give players more than a full Titan crystal. And it turns out it gives you 20,100 shards. You know, they're technically not lying, but there's, you know, and they do stuff like that constantly. And this is just yet another example where they have used that specific matchup where that specific ensnare is completely vital for that fight. But now they're gonna just randomly take it away. Now that all the crystals have been sold, now that all the awakening gems have been purchased for her and all the catalysts have been used, they're gonna be like, remember that deep dive? Yeah, fuck that, it doesn't matter anymore. The third argument, and this is more of a counterpoint, because I have heard that, you know, from genius levels of stupidity, that I have heard that, oh, Spider-Woman doesn't need ensnare in her kit. You know, she was never meant to be good against those matchups. She doesn't need it. We do have historic examples of champions and what happens when you do similar adjustments for them. The first example I want to say, anybody remembers Mallman? And I don't mean the current Mallman. I remember when Mallman's actually good. Mallman at his time of bug fixing was a top 3 skill champion. It's a top 3, top 4 skill champion. Definitely one of the most popular options, one of the most ranked up options. And why was he so popular? Because he could maintain his true accuracy passive alongside his damage. It was quite decent, especially when you boost it up. And Mallman didn't lose his weight counter. Kabam simply made it so that Mallman can't have high amount of damage and counter the weight at the same time. Maintain all of his other abilities. The only thing that Bugfix did was make sure that you pick either damage or you counter weight. And Mallman effectively immediately went from top 3, top 4 skill champion in the game at that point to a borderline relevant champion. Some people who really wanted him still used him, and he was good for some very specific Alliance War fights, but even those fights he did worse in many cases, and we just didn't necessarily had better options. But objectively speaking, he lost his place in the rankings like that. So taking away that away counter completely is a big fucking deal. Even if it's not just the bullseye matchup, there are plenty of others, and there's always the nodes that give opponents evades as well. There's the mix masters, there's, the node where they evade when you knock them down, and so on and so forth. Because, evade is a mechanic Kabam uses quite a lot, whether on defenders kits themselves or in the format of nodes. Taking that away is a huge deal, and Mallman proved it completely. Mallman was one of the best evade counters with high amount of damage. As soon as you had to pick either or, relevance immediately fell down drastically. As a second example of how important is 30% ability accuracy reduction, there are kind of like 3 quick things I'm going to mention. Number 1 is, for those of you who remember pre 12.0 Black Widow, that she used to have 100% ability accuracy reduction. As soon after 12.0, it went down to 70%, and immediately she went from one of the best champions in the game to complete trash, right? That was the 30% reduction that did that. If you don't like that example, then there's a brief, power of that ability in relative terms, because we're not talking about defensive or offensive ability accuracy reduction, we're talking about general ability accuracy reduction. And the best visualization for that is that Spider-Woman can effectively work as an Archangel with one neurotoxin on the opponent. Relatively high Sig Archangel Here you go. 30% ability accuracy reduction, Sig 100 Archangel. 1 neurotoxin. The 1 neurotoxin is useful and will help you, just like her ensnare did. And the best example of how useful that ensnare is found in one quite relevant fight, if you ask me. We take a look at 2025 champions, Dark Phoenix. Now, obviously, she's not meant to be the best Dark Phoenix counter, and she never was. But this fight perfectly explains how important that 30% ability accuracy reduction is. Because when you fight Dark Phoenix, and you can reduce the ability accuracy of opponent by 30%, for instance, when Dark Phoenix throws her special tool, let's say, you can see the first ability is Inflict Root. Why does that exist? It basically exists so you end up taking more block damage, so you can't, outrange that level 2. Well, you have 30% chance to fail that, right? Second fun is, on activation, gain a fairly significant Fury buff, which will then further power up all the no flames that she would inflict on you. Well, if you have 30% chance to fail this, together with an equity, that works together as significant damage mitigation, because you have 30% chance to fail that Fury. So you have a chance to take less damage because you can fail Root. You have a chance to take less damage because you can fail that Fury. And then, obviously, you have 30% chance to fail the no flame itself. And that is within the regular fight mechanic itself. And then, on top of it all, you have 30% chance to fail that immortality, and you have 30% chance to fail that no flame. The end result is that overall, Spider-Woman goes through this fight significantly better than just about any other champion that, is not meant to be a counter to Dark Phoenix. So it is a very powerful ability that doesn't break the game. It just helps her to be a bit better than most in several random matchups. And the same, idea goes in like Serpent fight. It's not a good Serpent counter, but, because of the 30% ability accuracy reduction and a few other things, you have a chance to fail that true focus buff that he gets, and then you can dex his level 2. You have a chance to fail the power gain that he gains naturally, or the power gain that he gets after the level 2. You have a chance to fail that immortality as well. So none of those are guarantees, but enough of these things happen throughout the fight to make those fights more manageable. They're not easy, they're not walks in the park, it's not like using a Kushala or Chavez against Serpent or anything like that. You can somewhat get that fight done. But somewhat getting that fight done was a very big aspect of why Spider-Woman is such a charming offensive champion. Right, so I hope I have made my point of how significant this change is. It really, really does a lot. And again, as an example of before, Mole-Man had significantly smaller change done to him, and that was enough to make him from a champion that's up here in his class, a champion that's, used here and there somewhere. He's not awful, but, he's fairly mid-decent. And that's from somebody that used to love Mole-Man, and I still kind of like him, but he's definitely significantly worse, and I use him a lot less than I used to. Right. Reason number 4. Reason number 4 why people are so upset is because this post is full of bullshit. Like, there's no other way to put it. This post is full of gaslighting, and that is just a natural reaction of people who get angry and upset when somebody's talking out of their ass. Like, I could not make a post like that. If somebody paid me $1,000 to go and lie to tens of thousands of players, I don't think I could make that post. Because it is just so dishonest. First of all, they go on offensively, you're not touching her. The change is affecting her as much offensively, if not more, than it is defensively. Because on defense, you can already switch off that ensnare by activating a special attack at a specific time. Right? Because that whatever. And, you know, there is an argument made for, you know, adjusting her on defense. It is not this one. It sure as shit ain't this one, because we already discussed how the champion attributes, how mattered jack shit when Kabam doesn't want them to matter. And, you know, you don't have to look far to look at, you know, it has 2.5 in attack, like example. Like, what the hell is that? There are so many champions with wildly inaccurate champion attributes that Kabam did not change, that bringing them up now is absolutely not justified. They never gave a shit about them. But they're now trying to use this as an excuse. That is first thing. Second thing is saying that we're not going to be attacked, you know, we're happy with her offensively, but, you know, it's the defense that matters. Because it's obvious to any idiot, if you put in just a little bit of an effort, Kabam could make it so that this change affects only defense. Kabam could easily make it so that she on defense does not place Ensnare in her ability description, or just add Ensnare as a pre-fight or something. It could easily be done. But no. And overall, we believe this is an important update in our ongoing efforts to prevent too many strong defenders from being introduced too quickly. Ah, fuck off. This is flat out insulting. Just flat out insulting what they are telling here. Also, the idea that, oh, she doesn't need it in her matchups. It's like, yes, she fucking does. Now, I would almost be willing to, you know, bet $20 that within the next 2 months we're going to get a Mystic Defender at the weights. That is exactly the opinion I and so many other people have of Kabam right now. Because every single thing that they type here is just full of shit. Especially this post. Especially this post. Also, like a small detail, how remember how persistent Kabam was of their batches of 3, and the idea that, you know, we're gonna push them back in order not to overwork our coders, and we're gonna do it very gradually, and we had to wait like a year plus for that pathetic Patriot buff. Then all of a sudden, with Spider-Woman, they're somehow willing to make an exception. Oh, we're just gonna push her into the next one. Every single thing about this, it just smells of shit. It really does. And the point number five, I kind of touched it already, is that based on what they have said themselves, that they want to reduce her defensive impact. Again, which I don't necessarily agree, but I can see the case. And the reduction of defensive impact is mainly because of the interaction with Alliance War nodes, nothing else. It's like Battlegrounds nodes, and I don't think she's like an issue in Battlegrounds. I think she can be an issue in Alliance Wars, where there are some ridiculous nodes that Kabam has recently put in that interact quite busted with Spider-Woman. But answer to that could have easily been adjust the over-tuned Alliance War defense nodes as well, instead of, you know, nerfing Spider-Woman. But fine. I'm not even gonna like. I had this entire like long ass discussion on stream with one of my friends about Spider-Woman on defense, and it's like, I don't think she warranted the defensive nerf. I don't believe that. But you know what? If it was just the defensive nerf, it'd kind of make her with it, right? It'd be one of those things like, I disagree with it, but, you know, it's not infuriating me that much to make like a massive fuss about it. But the combination of factors that we discussed so far, starting from Kabam's bullshit, as well as past examples, as well as everything else, there's just no excuse to say that we're happy with her offensively, but and then nerfing her offensively. So, the obvious, easy solutions: make that ensnare a pre-fight, or make that ensnare work only on attack. That's it. That's it. And can you imagine a world where Kabam wasn't full of shit? Where they actually went out and said, honestly, she's overperforming defensively, she has crazy interactions with some specific nodes in Alliance War. So, we never intended her to be such a strong defender. And we have chosen to, remove the ensnare from defense. That's it. They just had to put in a little bit more work on the balance, number one. Number two, stop being full of shit. And significantly lesser amount of people would have been pissed off with them. But instead, they chose to try and gaslight us and type all this bullshit and then go completely, dead comms on the people. And ultimately, the next video, one of the next videos, I have a few planned now, but one of the next videos, I'm definitely going to be talking about MCOC in terms of fun and Kabam's decision making. Whether any of their recent decisions have made the game more fun for me. And I don't think Kabam is going to like that, so let me know what you guys think. I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information